Hi everyone, I'm Sam from Founder Stories Mornington Peninsula. We're here today at the Waves Farm, formerly known as the Revillaging Project, and I have the most amazing lineup of people, local founders, leaders, industry experts, all here. My Founder Stories series is all about highlighting the people behind the brands of the Mornington Peninsula, and I cannot wait to show you this series. But I do also mention if anyone has a story that they'd like to share, a founder that's out there in the community that has a real reason for being, a purpose, please reach out. I'd love to have you on the series. But today, let's go and interview some Series 2 founders. Hi everyone, welcome back. We've now got Waves Farm joining us, and we've got Josh Melnick and again Narelle Melnick. So welcome Josh, and back to you Narelle. Today we are sitting upon the UNESCO-protected wetlands of Waves Farm, formerly the Revillaging Project. It's a sensational day outside, as you can see over my shoulder. Hopefully the chickens and the geese will join us shortly.
They'll try.
They'll try. Yeah, they already did try and come in the back before. We've been chatting to Narelle around what the offering of Waves Farm has, which includes a wellness space, a community hub, amongst an organic farm. So Josh, let me just take you all the way back. You're not from Australia originally. You're from all the way over in New York?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just tell us a little bit how growing up in New York and how vastly different it is to Australia, but what was it like growing up in New York?
Yeah, well, I grew up in New York City, so,
wow.
it's not like I grew up around anything rural. I really didn't know anything but the city. I used to go to sleep to the sound of ambulances and sirens and, couldn't sleep without all the noise kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's truly amazing. And then for various reasons you ended up in Australia. Was it a filming thing? I know you met Narelle because Narelle shared that story with us before in America.
Mm-hmm.
But tell us a little bit more about how, because had you been to Australia before you'd met Narelle?
No, I'd never been to Australia.
Really?
I had never planned on moving to Australia before I met Narelle, of course.
But
things happened.
But things happened, and here you are.
And we became parents, and COVID happened, and
very tricky time, 2019.
Yeah.
It was only 7 years ago, but it feels like a lot closer.
Feels like a lot longer.
Well, it feels like longer, and it feels like it wasn't that long ago in many ways. But I'm glad you brought it up because I think it was an interesting time for the peninsula in the fact that we contracted a lot during that time, and now we're now in a process of sort of ebbing and flowing. We're growing again, and in amongst the offerings that the peninsula is well known for is the hospitality, the community hubs, the wellness space, which is something that is captured here at Waves Farm across the board. But before we jump into that specifically, why farming then? You've come from New York.
Yes.
Why? What brought you? What was your vision?
Yeah, well, Narelle calls me the accidental farmer.
Yes.
Because it wasn't in the plan. But again, it's I think really why farming.
Yes.
Was because we realized as parents that we wanted a different world for our kids.
Yes.
A world where kids knew where their food came from, where we lived in a balanced ecosystem, where we lived in harmony with nature.
Yep.
And living in our own suburban life in Los Angeles in, our old lives, which was me working as a filmmaker, doing this kind of stuff. And it was one thing to kind of think about those thoughts and try to bring them into our family, but it actually became at a certain point impossible without becoming the change ourselves.
Yes.
And so when presented with the opportunity to learn more and to actually do it ourselves, again, originally I thought we'd find a farmer, but we just sort of realized we had to, be the people.
Yeah. Be the change.
Be the change.
Be the change.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely, you're such a role model, but also an icon down here. I mean, it's pretty sensational. We've got someone who was well known in Hollywood, doing your movie thing, and now you're operating a farm. So you just learn day to day doing, don't you?
Yeah.
Doing is learning.
Yes.
It's truly iconic. Well done. And congratulations to both of you. I mean, what an extraordinary thing that you're doing here. And you have 3 children we were discussing with Narelle, and they're growing up barefoot with chickens and geese and all the fun things. But so you have an organic farm out the back. So you also offer, Waves Farm itself offers, an organic hub for local produce, which I love myself. Question for you then is also around the change of name. So it used to be known as the
The
Revillaging
Revillaging Project.
Project, which we'll leave there. It's now called Waves Farm, which is very exciting.
Yes.
Can you just talk us through a little bit about why you changed the name and what does it mean to you guys?
Yeah. Well, I think that when we started the project,
Yep.
we started it as a project with a series of questions. We didn't start this farm as a business with a business plan.
Yep.
It really was about, like you said before, becoming the change that we wanted to see in the
Yep.
world.
Yep.
And we started it as a project because my background first as an artist and then as a filmmaker, when I approach art always comes from a question. If you knew the
Yes.
answer, there's no reason to do art,
Oh my
right?
God, I love that.
And
Yes.
so for us, that question was really, right, like, how do we raise conscious children? How do we do this thing about being a parent right now when there seem to be so few positive environmental role models around, right? And how do we do that in a way that where we can actually live our values as parents, right? So in the past, when we were living in Los Angeles, we'd send our kids to progressive environmental schools, but in order to afford to do that, I had to travel overseas for 3 weeks at a time
Right.
to film commercials for corporations that I didn't actually believe in and didn't go with
Oh,
my
yes.
values, right? So I think a lot of this was about how do we align? And we didn't know the answers, but we knew that we kind of had to start somewhere, right? And so when the opportunity came to buy this land,
Yep.
we called it the Revillaging Project because you've heard that term, right? It
Yep.
takes a village to raise
Takes
a
a
child.
village.
And I think for us, we were like, where is the village and how do we do this thing?
Yeah.
And that's why it was called the Revillaging Project.
Yep.
And for us, it felt so like such a hopeful, optimistic trajectory. Revillage. We're not looking for the old way of doing things. We're looking to, reignite. How can we really create something new here?
Yeah.
And like we were talking about before, you were talking about checking out to do work to pay for the schools, and we were talking about having, for our own wellness, how do we actually find space to not have to check out to come back,
how to not outsource our parenting kind of thing.
Yes, that's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Particularly having 3 kids as well. I've got one. So
Mm.
having 3. But I like the fact you live your purpose, you live your vision. You're not just, oh, I have an idea. You live it here. And then Waves Farm. So tell
Yeah.
us around, I love this story. And
Mhm.
we're surrounded by part of the UNESCO-protected wetlands out the back there has Phragmites,
Mhm.
which is part of the Waves logo.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, exactly. And the Phragmites are an incredibly important indigenous plant.
Yes.
One of the things that for us was really important when we moved on to this country was to connect with indigenous elders and to really
Yes.
learn about how to respectfully engage with
Yes.
this land. And we've been incredibly blessed to have beautiful collaborators and support in that
Yeah.
world, including Living Culture and friends from the Bunurong Land Council, and to really kind of get in touch with that. And so that became our logo,
Yeah.
partly because you look out onto it and it just has these incredible,
It does.
waves as it blows in the wind. And the Phragmite is, as we learned, just a really multi-use plant.
Yeah.
The roots were used for food. The stalks were used for snorkels, for hunting. The tops, like, it just has multi-purposes through its lifespan. So it's
That's
really interesting.
Yeah, and they're all protected lands here. So you're surrounded by farm, but you're also you're guardians or stewards of
Yeah.
this land. How many acres is
Yeah.
it?
So it's about 20 acres. And I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's an important context for the farm.
Yes.
Right. So the farm is 20 acres. And what really attracted us to this property is that about half of that were these degraded wetlands.
Yeah.
Part of what happened is the wetlands had been drained, they'd been pastured with cattle, and over time it had really, these important wetlands, which are an incredible amount of biodiversity, had been destroyed. And so for us, when we thought about doing this farm, it was like, how can we again live our values? And we wanted to basically give back half of it to nature and protect half of it to nature. And these degraded paddocks out there, which are now coming back
Yes.
through rewilding and through various regenerative approaches and grants we've gotten, are really starting. It's a big part of the farm. And what we always talk about here is like this idea of 2/3 for the birds, right?
Yep.
So like we live in typical like sort of Western farming culture. Farming as a business, right,
Yes.
is kind of an extractive business. You try to maximize your land and extract value from it. This isn't really like in harmony with our values. So our kind of theory of change is that, well, can we do a very, very small farm and
Yes.
do a small scale biointensive farm, grow food organically, incredibly nutritious, give back half the land to nature, but actually trust in the fact that when we increase biodiversity, give 2/3 of the birds, that actually in this sort of permaculture system, that nature will in fact enhance the farm.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's really what we're trying to do here. So it's a very tiny farm with a very,
Well, not so tiny, but considering it feels tiny, I suppose, when you say it like that, but it is just undulating hills of wetlands. And I love the biodiversity, even just coming in this morning where there was birds everywhere. It really is an extraordinary place. And it's a real credit to both of you that you put your heart and soul into everything you do. Well, now also we know that Zen Wellness is here as well, which is an offering on at the Waves Farm, which is has a sauna, yoga classes, and there's some nurturing going on with Sage Mama. Also within that wellness space, some of your rye courses. But let's talk a little bit more around that organic component. I know you were talking before around the richness of the biodynamic fruit and vegetables that you offer at the back. You can actually purchase those, can't you? Well, there's a bit of a waiting list at the moment, I believe, but you can purchase those, which importantly helps support you guys do what you do here. That's correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So we do sell veggies. We have the Veggie Box program. And people can sign up for a waiting list for that for next season. And it's a great way for people. Again, it's like what we want for our family and our kids is what we actually want for the community, which is for people to know where their food is from. So it's an open and educational farm, and all the veggies are based around people who can come, they can walk the farm, they can learn about this kind of farming. And not only can they buy the vegetables, but actually they can sort of learn how to take some of these practices into their own home gardens, because really that's what we want in the world. We want many, many small farms and many families growing their own food, and many children being raised in connection with nature.
And understanding what seasonal means.
Exactly.
When you live off the land, you live off what it provides you, and then you enjoy it for what it is, and I think your body receives it much differently. And we know that there's a lot of overconsumption, and insofar as there's certain organisations which shall remain unnamed that have a huge waste of food. We need to stop doing that if we're going to protect the species as we are. But returning back to the Mornington Peninsula, we know that this place is an extraordinary hub for different things, but excitingly, Waves Farm is also going to have not only the fruit and veg box, which we all love, and certainly I've been on the wait list for a little while, so maybe I'll be able to move up a bit.
We'll bump you up.
Bump me up
after
a bit.
This podcast.
But there's also, you're going to have a cafe here moving forward. I heard that there was an Airstream that you guys are doing up. So we're also, just for everyone who's watching or hasn't been to Waves Farm, it's a very busy road out the front, or it's a connecting road, I should say, from one end of the peninsula to the other. It's called Browns Road. Road. So you should keep an eye out if you're driving down this way. But you're going to have Airstream situated out the
so
front
for those of the viewers who don't know, an Airstream is in a very American kind of iconic old trailer, and it's from the 60s, and they're these like silver bullets, and we're very lucky to have been donated it by someone. And we've been in the loving process of renovating it for the last 6 months. And it's actually going to be our farm gate. And we'll be doing coffee there, and it'll be a place where people can pick up veggies.
Amazing.
And eventually, start to get a bit of farm fresh food as well.
And sell, whatever you harvest off the land, and be able to turn it into something and then sell it on as whatever it turns up as. But I can't wait for that offering as well, because I do drive down this road quite a lot. So that's amazing.
Yeah, we need some good coffee around here.
We do need good coffee, but I really, really appreciate and love your ethos around connecting people back onto the land as well. Walk the farm, come and have a look, come and enjoy it. Particularly on a day like today, I think it goes without saying it's such a special place. So just to come back to the start of the farm. So we have Waves Farm, and it's been here for a little while, serving either as a community hub or fresh fruit and veg, or biodynamic organic fruit and veg. Tell us a little bit more about its ethos, or when it first started out.
So when we first sort of happened into this property, we walked the land, and we walked over to the far edge where the farm now sits. And we looked at each other and said, we'll find a farmer and we'll farm this land and we'll bring healthy food to the community, and it was always this vision of having different micro businesses, people like Zen Wellness
Collaborators.
coming,
Yes.
collaborators. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. To really start to build that modern day village. And so the way the farm started was, you know, we didn't just find a farmer. We found a friend who was into farming, and he is actually a teacher, and he was leading a little homeschool pod at that time. And he took a group of young children who were teenage children, and on day one, they took picks and I don't even know all the tools they had, and they literally broke ground and planted things. And it was the smallest little patch, and it was really hard work to break through the grass that is all over this property, which is
Yeah.
very intense. And and then they weren't coming regularly enough that every time that they did come, it would be like a whole mess of weeds and working it. And we still have that little zone, don't
Yeah,
we,
we do.
on the farm with the original
Oh,
grandmother
that's lovely.
chard in there. But it's since then, you know, just listening to Josh talking about the farm, all of that has been over the past few years that we've been here. It's just been this journey of expansion and learning more and more and more as we go through talking to locals, doing it through, you know, training, through all sorts of different ways that
Yeah. And I guess probably if there's anything that we want people to know,
Yes.
and is that when they come and visit the farm, is
Yes.
that we're still learning as well too.
Yeah.
And kind of like if a city boy like me who didn't grow up around any of
Yes.
this stuff
Yes.
can do it, then people certainly can take these things back to their homes and do them in their life. It's
Yeah.
not rocket science, like growing things without chemicals. It sort of just makes common sense. But we live in a world where we don't see many models
No.
of what that looks like.
Exactly right.
And so like really it's like, you know, for me, like what lights me up is purpose. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Like this is a values-led, purpose-driven business. And for us, the purpose is to actually like inspire that kind of change. You know, we want people to get their hands in the soil, and we want them to like plant a seedling
Yep.
in their
Get
in
their
home.
fingernails dirty,
Yeah.
pick things out of the ground, understand, taste it straight from the dirt.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the food is unbelievable here.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. It's the love that goes into the
Mm.
land and the appreciation for its environment,
Yeah.
which is something that you guys do perfectly. I just want to also touch on, we've talked about the vegetables as well as the community hub here, but you also have another offering. It's called Zen Wellness now, and you've
Yeah.
partnered with them. And they have a sauna outside. And just walk me through a little bit of how that came about.
Do you want to talk about that a bit? Or
jump in.
yeah. Well, I just, you know, as the resident yoga teacher,
Yes.
I thought, you know, for us, again, it's like when we started the farm as a project, the question was the things that we talked about were wellness, right?
Yes.
How can we be well? How can we be well in our human bodies? How can we be well as families? How can we be well in the land and you know, in our food? And what I think that the question we were struggling with is that we're just noticing is that in our own lives, we might go to say like a yoga class and feel well in our body.
Yep.
But what good is it if that's good if like the land outside is unwell
Absolutely.
or the soil in which our food is grown is unwell? So really like the farm was started with these thinking about wellness, but in a very holistic sense,
Yep.
right? And the vision here was always to have, we're in a beautiful studio.
Yep.
Narelle's a yoga teacher. And we always wanted to collaborate with people and
Yep.
bring in and have constant wellness classes, you know? And, you know, that way we could sort of work on the wellness of the body here
Yep.
while I'm working out on the wellness of the soil,
Oh,
you
I
know,
love
kind
it.
of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so for a long time, we've been holding the space. We've been having, you know, beautiful events, beautiful workshops. We've
Yep.
had a lot of lovely local teachers renting out the space and using it, but it hasn't had this unified wellness community that we've always craved.
Yep.
And we met Tanika from Zen Wellness,
Yep.
and we recently started a collaboration. You should definitely have her on the podcast
Yeah,
soon.
we'll have to get her along.
She's got an incredible local business. And we're starting a partnership now where she'll
Yes.
be running and curating a beautiful wellness studio here. So people will have the option of incredible yoga classes and also fire and ice sauna, as you said, right out the back. And
Yep.
here's like a sauna where you're just looking out at the wetlands and looking at the birds. And the idea of the experience that we are creating here is one in which someone can come, have a great yoga class, have a sauna,
Yeah.
and then walk out the back and have an amazing coffee,
Yeah.
and then leave with their veggies for the week and
Yeah.
and feel really well,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
and know that all of those dollars that they're spending are actually supporting a profit not a profit-driven
Yes.
business, but a purpose-driven business. And that purpose is allowing us to sort of continue to regenerate and restore the
Absolutely.
wetlands out there. So that's really what we're trying to do.
Well, you can see where your money's going, because the moment you drive in, you're met with the most beautiful wetlands, which I know Mornington Peninsula Shire also helps you
Yes,
look
we're
after.
very lucky to have the support of the climate action grants from the Mornington Peninsula Shire. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, with such a vast property, although it feels small sometimes, it is actually quite a vast wetlands. So the Shire has certainly helped you do that. But again, you have it all covered. You've got wellness from the yoga perspective, or moving the body, and Sage Mama to help sort of put that into a supportive environment for mothers, children, families, exactly. And then all the way through to what you walk out with, which is not only a good coffee, but a wellness box. You could almost call them wellness boxes because they're beautifully harvested, local fruit and vegetables, or mostly vegetables I've noticed, but I love it really, really, what do you call it when a carrot, when you eat a carrot and it just tastes like a carrot? I can tell you, you do an amazing thing here, and your nurturing of the person that comes through is just truly phenomenal. So I commend both of you. And I just wanted to say thank you very much. But before we do finish up, what is next for Waves Farm? There is an open day coming up. Hopefully we'll get this up and running in time to get you May 2nd. There is an open day, but there's going to be, I assume, a few open days on the calendar for the remainder of the year. But what's past that? What else is happening on the farm?
What else is happening on the farm? Gosh, I mean, there's feels like there's just so much
There
happening.
is, yes.
There's so much happening all the time. But I think for us, our real focus is going to be on our front of the house experience with the Airstream, welcoming people, starting to sort of share the story of what we're doing. You know, a lot of it, what I realize in having these kind of conversations, even just like the luxury of sitting next to Narelle for a moment and talking about what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Because the last 3 years from starting the project and moving it into the farm, it's been one of just action of doing. And we haven't done a lot of the storytelling or the sharing. And I think that the phase, what's next for us now, is really kind of like opening the gates. You know, everyone drives by Browns Road and they're like, what's going on there? And saying, welcome, like this is what we're doing. Come and explore. And if you want to stop for a coffee with your kids, if you want to have a farm tour, if you want to book an event, like there are many ways that we can work together. And, you know, that's sort of what we're focusing on, is opening, you know, the doors and storytelling. And then I guess the only other thing that's coming down the road to, you know, to share with you is that another thing that we've realized in our kind of like impact driven strategy, let's call it, is that the way that we can affect change is by dealing with the people who actually create change. And those are corporations, and those are local businesses. And we started to experiment with hosting these kind of regenerative team building days here on the farm.
Yeah, fantastic idea.
Where we use the space and we use the farm and we use many of our local connections, from Indigenous elders to farmers to wetlands experts. And we sort of curate these amazing peninsula experience for local businesses.
Exactly right.
And really show people, again, it's like you can understand in your head the problems of the environment. But to really get, and I think this is what Narelle and I talk about, like how can we create an experience for people to get into their hearts and into their hands? And we believe
and be that change, because they take it away with them. And if they learn even just the wellness within themselves, if that sort of holding of the whole person, they do take that away, and then everything is a cascade effect or a ripple effect, as we talk about on Founder Stories. So you're exactly right. And I cannot wait. I know you guys are growing year on year, and you have a wait list for the fruit and veg box, but I can't commend you enough, and I'm so glad you invited us along today. And thank you very much for coming on, Josh and Narelle.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.